Kyuji OP is the Sternritter bestowed with the letter J. His Schrift J stands for the jail. This peculiar ability allows him to trap his opponents in a cage-like prison. He was the first Sternritter to appear in the story and also the first one to showcase the Schrift. The Schrift matches his personality as he loves to suppress and torture his enemies. The reishi prisons he constitutes isolate the person trapped inside it from the outside world. The people outside can't sense the spiritual energy of the person inside, and the one inside can't do the same for the outside. It is a Schrift ability with a nature focused on defensive and restraining power than an offensive one. One of the ways to escape this prison is by defeating Kyuji outside the prison. But for opponents like Ichigo who have immense spiritual energy, this prison falls a bit short. So despite its strong applications of imprisonment by immobilizing the opponents and preventing their escape, the jail is ineffective against opponents who have powerful offensive capabilities. They can easily bypass or break the prison. Berenice Gabrielli is the Sternritter Q, holding the Schrift power of the question. This Schrift involves Berenice asking questions about the opponent's nature and existence. Anyone who hears a question coming out from Berenice's mouth is objected to answering it in a limited time frame. The answer should be of solid reasoning and logic, as whoever doesn't meet these conditions will suffer consequences. This Schrift basically forces its opponents into a mental state in which they can't act normally. They get overwhelmed by the concept of a different question and how to answer each one of them. This leads to a mentally disoriented opponent just standing in the open with no room left for thoughts. We didn't get to see this ability in action as a deafened Kenpachi Zaraki was easily able to counteract this ability and slit Berenice's throat. But as we know it, the ability purely exists to throw its opponents into a mental distraught. While Berenice didn't get so much screen time, we know his Schrift also falls less on the combat-oriented side and more on the strategic side, as it has all mental-inducing applications. This effectively makes Berenice a master of psychological warfare. Next is Sternritter N, Robert Acutron. His main weapons are pistols that fire energy bolts. Even though his Schrift remains unknown, we can speculated to be some ability with teleportation traits. He can use this ability to manipulate his opponent's blind spots and teleport behind them. From what we have seen on Robert, he showcases remarkable speed and agility in all his combat, so this seems like the best representation for his Schrift. We can't say anything much about his ability since he also didn't receive much screen time, but from what we have seen, he is one of the elite Quincy who has successfully overwhelmed captain-level Shinigamis in battle. Robert is a very tactical fighter. He likes to analyze his opponents and take advantage of their weaknesses. Driscoll Berie is the Sternritter O, with the Schrift power of the Overkill. From his build and personality, it can be seen that he is a battle junkie who loves to talk down on his opponents and unfairly fight them. It doesn't matter if his opponent is worthy of him or not, he will undermine them equally. His weapons are a pair of knuckles from which he can also materialize spears to throw. The Overkill is a very simple Schrift. With every enemy, ally, or creature Driscoll defeats, he gets stronger. To specify, with each kill, Driscoll starts growing in size and strength, which means that once he goes on a rampage, it is better to stop him quickly or he will just keep getting stronger. This ability makes him one of the most aggressive and brutal Sternritter. Aside from this, his most notable feat is that he had stolen Yamamoto Genryusai's Bankai. He was also able to utilize this fire-based Bankai with his Schrift ability. Welding Zanka no Tachi with the Overkill showed overwhelming destructive power, making him an offensive monster. Being of a sadistic nature he is, it is without a doubt that Overkill was the best ability for him. Sternritter U, Nanana Najakup, holds the power of the underbelly. His Schrift allows him to observe and detect his opponent's weaknesses through their Reiatsu. He has a technique called Morphine Pattern, in which he marks his opponents with his epithet letter and then forms a grid over their shadow. This permits him to analyze his opponent's Reiatsu structure. He can then find weaknesses in the structure and exploit them. Once a weakness is found, Nanana can increase the power of this weakness through the enemy's Reiatsu structure. This will deplete the opponent's spiritual energy to the point that either they become immobile or fall unconscious. Unfortunately, this ability has a major downside. It requires Nanana to closely observe his opponents for quite some time, which can be dangerous for him as he can't do anything else within the time frame. By attacking the holes in his enemy's Reiatsu, he causes their spiritual pressure to deplete. This means that the more time he gets to observe someone, the more potent his ability gets. Jerome Gbat is Sternritter R, holding the Schrift ability of the Roar. As the name suggests, it's an ability that amplifies his roars, producing strong shockwaves. It can also turn him into a giant ape, boosting his strength as well. This ability can be called a crowd control ability, as the shockwaves his roar produces can easily blow off the heads of low-ranking Shinigamis. The sonic shockwaves are amplified to a level that is unbearable for an average Shinigami, much less a human, but unluckily it isn't as effective on high-level Shinigamis like Kenpachi Zaraki, who was immune to his roar. Being the straightforward ability that it is, if it isn't found effective on an opponent, it means that it isn't going to help him out in the long run as well. Being a decent crowd control ability, it means nothing against captain level Shinigamis, as they can just withstand the roar and slash him apart. This is how Kenpachi was easily able to take him down, and it shows that any other captain would have also been able to do the same. Lloyd, one of the two Sternritters granted with the Shrift Y, has the power of the Yourself, which enables him to mimic his opponent's fighting style and appearance. Lloyd and Lloyd are identical twins who always had a knack for mimicking people from a young age. After becoming Sternritter, both of them received the Shrift ability of the Yourself. This ability allows Lloyd to create a mirror image of whoever he is fighting. There is no limit as to who he can or can't copy, as he was even able to mimic Kenpachi Zaraki. This ability also has a major weakness. That is, if the ability is deployed before his opponents reach their full power, then Lloyd will be left in a state weaker than his enemy. He can't redo his transformation, and he also can't grow like his opponent does. This is what led to his loss against Kenpachi Zaraki. Zaraki was able to power up and grow stronger during his fight with his copy. Lloyd, on the other hand, can not only mimic his opponent's fighting style and ability, but also their memories. He can basically replace a person by taking their appearance and gaining their memories. By doing this, he was able to mimic Yhwach and defeat Kenpachi Zaraki, a feat his brother couldn't reach. He was also able to stand up to Yamamoto Genryusai before he was finally cut down. By using the memories of the person he has mimicked, he can effectively make use of their signature abilities. You could say that he is able to flawlessly mimic his opponents, unlike his twin brother Lloyd. Sternritter K BG9 is a mechanical robot holding the Shrift K. His Shrift's ability is unknown, but as per what we have experienced, it can be speculated that his Shrift has some relation with information gathering and data compiling. BG9 takes a very analytical approach in fights, which is exactly how you would expect him to behave based on his mechanical appearance. He is inhumane in many ways, as he doesn't show any empathy or moral concern for anyone. He even planned to kill a vice captain's innocent family just to extract information from them. This shows that he has no bound of moral concerns. He also has mechanical speech, and his logic resembles that of how a robot or computer processes information. He has multiple weapons embedded into himself like a minigun or a rocket. In addition to these, he is a strategic fighter who collects data during his fights and gains insights with them. He is also the one who stole Captain Soilfun's Bankai, but he never utilized it. All he ever cared about was obtaining the necessary information and completing his mission. Kangdu is the Sternritter I. He is able to harden his body with the Shrift, the Iron. It is a defensive ability that hardens his body to a level that he can stop any blade that makes contact with his body. He can either partially or fully harden his skin as per the need, but do not mistake his ability to be that of general durability, as he can selectively enhance a specific part of his body, making it much more resilient than before. This ability gives him an edge against even captain level Shinigamis like Hitsugaya Toshiro. However, even this ability isn't invincible, as despite providing ultimate defense to Kangdu, it doesn't do much for his offensive capabilities. He has to ultimately rely on other Quincy techniques for attacking, and even his metal claws don't do much for him, as they prove to be useless in the battle against Toshiro. Pepe Wakabrada is Sternritter L with the Shrift, the Love. He can imprint feelings of love for himself on someone else, forcing them to obey his orders. It is a psychological ability that grants him control over anyone infected by his Shrift. They catch such hard feelings feelings for Pepe that they are compelled to do whatever he asks from them. When this ability is activated, a heart-shaped projectile is materialized which Pepe throws towards his opponents. Upon contact with this heart, the target catches intense feelings for Pepe. It is a very dangerous ability that can cause chaos on a battlefield. It doesn't differentiate between allies or enemies and exploits the emotions of every person targeted. The mechanic behind materializing the heart is just like sending a kiss. He basically forms a heart shape with his hands and materializes one. He then proceeds to throw it towards his enemies. This power is essentially a tactical or psychological weapon rather than that of a physical or offensive one. Having the ability of the wind, Nianzal Weizal is the Sternritter W. The wind grants him the power to use the surrounding wind to his advantage. The ability works in a very peculiar way, manipulating the flow of slashes of attacks around Nianzal by changing the flow of wind. He can effectively reflect and deflect any attack aimed at him by curving them away. This renders any and all incoming attacks useless against him. Beyond this, he can also use the wind in an offensive manner by twisting his opponent's bodies or blades. It's a very interesting power. However, it requires a fast reaction time to utilize it. So while it makes him invulnerable against any kind of spiritual or physical attack, if Nianzal doesn't react in time, he won't be able to defend himself from the incoming attack. Aside from that, his arrogance makes him reckless, which could lead to him underestimating his opponents. Lil Toto Lampard holds the Schrift G, the Gluttony. As the name implies, this ability gives her the power to consume anything. Whether it's a living being, energy, or a physical object of any kind, she can consume it. On top of this, she apparently lacks emotions, which can be a side effect of being a glutton, as all they think about is filling their needs irrespective of what is to be thought. The glutton gives her a physical makeover, allowing her to spread her mouth over an enormous size, enabling her to devour her targets as a whole. Anything she consumes turns into spiritual energy for herself, which she can then use to increase her power. It is a very versatile Shrift whose only purpose isn't for combat, but it also functions as a means for survival. She also has a very calm and collected personality, analyzing her every move before taking action. This makes her one of the most level-headed members of the Sternritter. Meninas McAllen is a harmless and cute-looking magical girl harnessing the ability of Shrift P, the power. This ability provides her enhanced superhuman strength, much more powerful than any other Sternritter's physical strength. She can lift massive objects, overpower her opponents, and deliver violent strikes with sheer force. While her physical attacks have no effect on opponents with very dense Reiatsu like Ichigo, she was able to send him flying with just 2 blows. Cute and calm nature is completely opposite of how she engages in combat with her opponents. She is a close quarter fighter whose Shrift only focuses on physical strength. This means that she lacks versatility and she can get outmaneuvered easily by her opponents. Furthermore, her own durability isn't per se enhanced by the Shrift, which means that she isn't invulnerable to any damage and can be injured. One of the most prominent Sternritters, Bambietta Basterbine. Bambietta holds the Shrift E, which bestows her with the ability of the Explode. It allows her to turn any tangible object she touches into a devastating bomb. These objects don't exactly transform, but instead just turn volatile, meaning that she can weaponize anything that she touches in her environment. Her Shrift has both a destructive and offensive nature. She can bomb her opponents with a single high explosive bomb or several low impact ones. It all falls to her decision. It is also a very versatile Shrift, as she can also weaponize spiritual energy. While in her Volstanding form, the Explode enhances and she can now shoot orbs of Reishi that already act as a bomb, and whatever object they come into contact with also becomes a bomb, exploding after a small delay. Candace Catnip is the Sternritter T, with the Shrift of the Thunderbolt. The ability gives the power to produce and control lightning at will. This makes her a very effective ranged fighter. Being of lightning nature, her attacks are both fast and destructive. They are difficult to avoid because of the great natural speed of lightning. Beyond this, she can also summon lightning bolts from the sky, and also use them to enhance her own body, making her physical strikes more destructive as well, effectively making her a strong close-range combatant as well. Though her energy attacks utilize a significant amount of spiritual energy, leaving her vulnerable to running out of stamina. Gizelle Giwel, Sternritter Z, bestowed with the power of the zombie. This is a Shrift with immense potential as it allows her to basically take control of anyone she gets her blood on. She can also revive the dead, turning everyone into her own servants. Additionally, she is also the healer of her group, as she can replace the flesh of living people with the flesh of the dead. The amount of blood it takes to control someone depends on the Ryatsu level the opponent has. If they are of captain level, it might prove difficult for Gazelle to control them, unless she throws a whole load of her own blood on them. The individuals and dead under her control fight entirely at her orders. Anything she commands them to do, they will. It is the most unique ability out of all the Sternritters, as it can essentially give the user an army of undead soldiers. Moreover, the dead she revives also retain the abilities they had in their own life, making them even more formidable. There is no limit to the amount of zombies she can have under her control. The only limit is that this ability does not work on alive Quincy, but it does work on alive Soul Reapers. Gazelle herself is an average power. Asnot is the wielder of the fear, Shrift F. It is an ability that allows him to put fear into his opponents. This is done by having them experience their deepest fears again in complete vivid detail. This leads to mental incapacitation of his opponents, which leaves them in a paralyzed state. The effects of this ability depend on the intensity of fear one carries. The more intense it is, the more devastating effects it pulls onto them. The effects cause the victim to start trembling, swearing, and losing their focus, leading them to their downfall. It can be said that he doesn't need to physically harm them to win this battle, as his presence alone can instill great fear into his opponents. During his Vollständig, he grows to an even larger size, and the potency of his ability increases. His opponents don't need to be struck by him to feel these effects. Just looking at him triggers it. Baz B, one of the most likable Sternritter, has the Shrift H of the Heat. This Shrift gives him the power to generate and manipulate flames that are powerful enough to burn anything coming in their path. He can effectively direct his flames with his fingers, and they also have the property of growing stronger the more he utilizes them. He has a special 5-finger form that he created for using this ability. Being a fire-based ability, it can be used in a variety of ways. He can make fire projectiles from them, make fireballs, or even envelop his own body in flame for close-range combat. His 5-finger form is used to deploy an increasing amount of flames with each extra finger he uses. This wide range of abilities gives him a lot of options in combat, making him an extremely versatile opponent to face. The only limit is that his ability also utilizes a significant amount of spiritual energy, just like Bambietta's thunder. This means that he is prone to losing his stamina in battle as well if he isn't strategic. Mask the Masculine and his little companion James are Sternritter S. Mask is a superstar with a wrestler build and abilities. He competes in a wrestling match with his opponents while James cheers for him on the sidelines with a bell. His Shrift allows him to increase his strength based on the intensity of cheers he is getting from the sidelines, which in this case is from James. His power increases the more intense the match gets. Eventually, it is revealed that James is actually the true Sternritter S, while Mask is just a projection of his hero. Both of their lifelines are connected, and the only way to defeat them is by either fatally wounding James so he can't heal himself in time, or killing both of them together. Gremmy Thamo, virtually one of the strongest Sternritter, holds the power of Shrift V, the Visionary. This Shrift allows Gremmy to turn anything he imagines into reality. He can basically create anything he wishes. This also involves his own body. He can heal himself or strengthen himself however he likes. It is an extremely overpowered ability that has no limits. Gremmy can envision anything and it will happen. He can tip any situation in his favor by using this ability. He has shown us some of the applications of this ability by creating meteors and beasts and even changing the landscape of his surroundings. That said, even this ability has a flaw, and that is his imagination is the only limit. This means that if his mental state is disturbed or his concentration is broken, he will be unable to think of anything to tip the scenario in his favor. We witnessed this during his fight against Kenpachi Zaraki, in which despite creating a double of himself to increase his imagination strength, he still lost to Kenpachi because he lost his willpower thinking he was no match for his bloodlust and confidence.